Welcome to Turn 1, a Formula One podcast. Now entering the grid. Here are your hosts, Thomas and Jeremiah.
Welcome back to another episode of Turn 1, a Formula One podcast. We're your hosts, Jeremiah
and Thomas.
Today we're going to talk about karting, and more specifically, how does karting lead to Formula One? We're also going to dive in a little bit about our experiences in karting and things that have happened to us while we've gone to these actual facilities and done a little bit of karting. Thomas, do you want to add to anything to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So in this episode, we're going to bring on some guests, and these guests are friends of ours. Tying to the aim of our podcast, they are new to Formula One and karting just like we are, and we thought it'd be good to have a couple of extra sets of eyes and perspectives that can shed light on new entrants to Formula One and hopefully encourage some of our listening audience to get out there and try karting, because we do think it is an awesome way to get into the sport.
Yes, guys, if you have not tried karting before, we highly recommend that you go and try it out. It's by far one of the funnest hobbies that I've picked up.
Absolutely. So did you know that in 2014, the FIA came out with this cool little program called the FIA Global Pathway from Karting to Formula One?
I didn't.
Okay, so this is one of FIA's many initiatives to make Formula sports more accessible to everybody. We all know that Formula One is a crazy expensive sport, and you can't just go be a Formula One driver or go be a Formula One team.
No.
You have to have some serious capital and investment and skill behind you to back that up. You have to have whole facilities dedicated to these cars and teams. But we know in F2, all of the cars are essentially stock cars, and it's to make them more affordable and therefore easier to get to at least that level. And then once you're there, you prove your stuff and you get into Formula One. So in 2014, they came out with this thing called the Pathway from Karting to Formula One, and they also introduced F4 at the same time, Formula 4.
Okay.
And so now there is a clear career path for drivers to start in karting, and then at the age of, I think it was 15 or 14, they can enter Formula 4 if they make the cut and work their way up. But they take all of the grades from all of the European and worldwide karting championships to determine who gets those spots in the Formula Feeder Series.
Oh my God, we're talking about hundreds of drivers from all over the world. Absolutely.
As we've mentioned before, and Jeremiah will touch on here in a second, karting is the foundation for like 90-something% of all the drivers. If you go back a little bit in time, it wasn't quite as common. It was more regional, more local. Smaller areas in Europe would have their own community-based karting events or karting centers. But now it is a worldwide phenomenon, and most of the karters on the grid have a karting history that is superb.
Yeah, it's when you go back and you look at Lewis Hamilton, who is somebody who very successful in karting after he won his championship in karting, approached the McLaren team boss for an autograph, but he told him in his cocky Lewis Hamilton way, he was like, one day I'm going to drive your cars. Sure enough,
little did they know.
Yeah, after about 3 years, I think it was, the team principal of McLaren reached back out to Lewis Hamilton and is like, hey man, we want to put you in our development program.
And that's where he wins his first championship.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Talk about a little bit of the other ones. People like Alan Prost, his story I kind of enjoyed. That's why I wanted to touch on that one. Alan Prost actually went on vacation with his family, did karting to pass the time while he was waiting in between, I guess, whatever they had planned when they went on vacation.
It's a little side adventure.
Yeah, just, I thought I'd just kill some time. We'll go pick up karting. Fell in love with it. And now, the rest is history. Goes on to win multiple world championships.
I think we can vouch for that. You'll hear it here in a couple minutes when we go to our interview segment with our guests, that there is something special that happens when you sit down in a real kart, whether it be electric or gas, something that's more than just your putt-putt level karts. Something special happens, and it is awesome feeling.
Yeah, and you have people, if we're talking about prior or current F1 drivers who are prior karting champions. I mean, Max Verstappen comes to the top of that list.
Yeah.
Lando Norris comes to the top of that list. And of course, we saw that video of Max and Charles in that incident.
Yep.
So we know Charles definitely had ties to karting and was one of the better ones. Otherwise, he wouldn't be where he's at today.
Anytime you look up any articles or you go on the trusted Reddit sources, they list Verstappen as one of the most dominant karters of all time.
And I believe them. And the reason why is because I don't know if you have. I've done a lot of diving into these YouTube videos that are readily available of current F1 drivers back in their karting days. Max was a dog.
Yeah.
I mean, there
Just
was
like now.
Yeah, well, I mean, for sure. And obviously it came from somewhere. But I remember distinctly there was this one race. It was a championship. I don't remember what year, but he was in third. Second place, Charles Leclerc. First place, not to disrespect the guy, but I have no idea who he was. Regardless.
Didn't make the cut.
Regardless, Max, I see Charles, he goes a little wide coming out of a turn. Max attacks, takes over Charles. A little bit later, Max is coming up on the gearbox of the guy in front of him. The guy in front of him goes a little wide. Max attacks again. He's in first. And while Charles is battling this other guy for now second place, Max is gone. I mean, he's put at least 2 seconds between him and the rest of them. And it's funny because if you're looking at the karters behind him, they're all tenths, hundreds of seconds right behind each other. And then way over here, yeah, that's Max up there.
Just like now where he's lapping people within the first single-digit lap numbers of a race.
Exactly. So now we're going to bring in our guest. We have 2 guests that are coming with us. 2 of our friends, John and Ian. We've taken them karting. We've watched F1 races with them. We've
got them into the F1 video games now where they have wheel setups and everything.
And answered questions to the best of our abilities based on where our knowledge level is at. But, John, one of the ones who kind of took to it a little harder. He's kind of started watching the races himself. We'll let him talk about that once we take you to our chat with them. And Ian, he's always been the guy who's playing racing video games. He's always been the guy who has an interest in the act of going fast and trying to pass people and all that, but never really, I guess, got into F1 until recently. And even now we'll let him talk about that.
All right. We are now joined by 2 guests on the Turn 1 podcast. We have Ian and John. Ian and John are similar to Jeremiah and I, that they are new to Formula One, if into it at all. We will find out in a minute. And they have also been karting a couple of times with us in person in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And so we wanted to just bring them on so that they could get their opinions and takes and see how their entrance into Formula One compares to ours and compares to everyone else's. So Ian and John, we'll start with John, but I've got a couple of questions for y'all, and then we can just go from there. John, what is your experience with Formula One?
Yeah, so similar to y'all, my first experience with Formula One was Drive to Survive, and it really dramatized somewhat of F1, and really it was just my first entrance into it. I grew up, watching NASCAR, candidly, and not really watching all that much. But yeah, Drive to Survive was just, it really dove into some of the basics and whatnot, and that was my first entrance into really F1.
Sweet. When did you start watching Drive to Survive?
So that was the early part of this past season.
2022.
Yeah, 2022 season. And I guess it was probably 3 or 4 races in when I finished Drive to Survive, and I really got passionate about actually watching the races and catching them on Sundays.
Wait. So you binged 4 seasons in 4 weeks?
Yeah. Oh,
Right
it
on.
was tough because as I was getting to season 4, I had to watch one and then just stop. Like I was like, I'm gonna run out of material before it was just so captivativing. And just
he's got the new 40-hour work week. It's 40 hours of Netflix.
Yeah. Well, I'd catch myself at like 2 a.m. being like, I need sleep.
Hey everyone, Thomas here, co-host of the Turn 1 podcast. If you're currently listening to this episode, awesome, thank you. You can also find us on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok at Turn 1 Podcast. We will be posting full-length episodes, highlights, and clips on those 3 channels. You can also find us on Twitter at TRN1 Podcast, as well as Facebook, Turn 1. Finally, we have an email set up for everyone, trn1podcast@gmail.com. Please feel free to send us any comments, suggestions, or questions you might have. Just like the podcast, we are looking to grow and learn and become even bigger fans of the sport of Formula One. With that, we'll get back to it. John, who is your current favorite team and driver?
Oh, you're gonna hate me. Maybe not, but I mean Max Verstappen, man. He's just got that ambition and that drive, and
Yeah, he does.
and drive to survive. Max is gonna survive out there, and he's gonna drive. So I mean, plus I love Red Bull. So, but yeah.
Whenever we first logged onto the Zoom, John had a full-on Red Bull background that he has ditched for the podcast. Okay. Last question for this kind of part one for John before we bring it in. What would you say your level of interest is in F1 right now?
Oh, so right now I've been watching all of the off-season moves and what team principal moves, new drivers, as well as watching these podcasts, which has been freaking fantastic. Shout out, yeah. But I'm actually probably going to get that subscription so that I can keep up with the comms and the stats. Yes, the comms and the stats while we're racing. And I already told my roommates, I'm like, hey, Sunday morning at 8 a.m., the living room TV is mine.
Awesome. So you're like a full-on new fan.
Oh, and if I swear, if I could get a hold of like the raw stats behind, the monitors, that would be a dream. But
do not give this man that much power.
But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I'm just more casual. I mean, every time I talk to Jeremiah and Thomas to learn something, that I didn't know about F1, but
that's what we try to do.
But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
All right. So that was John. Ian, why don't you tell us a little bit about what, if you are into Formula One, if so, how your karting experiences were, or actually, you know what? Let's start with Formula One first. I want to hear if you're into it at all.
Yeah. Well, so first of all, thanks for having me. Like, y'all are awesome. Excited to watch this channel grow and watch it grow into like a nice community of F1 fans and racing fans alike. Myself in terms of F1, like growing up, I've always just been a fan of cars in general, like from playing racing games to honestly, it's just a lot of racing games, and I've always just liked to race in general.
He was on that Need for Speed Underground 2.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
Ian and I, our friendship goes back to junior high, right?
Yeah.
And we would be on Xbox Live, and I remember specifically Need for Speed Hot Pursuit.
Yeah.
And we would just see each other's names on the leaderboard. I don't even think we ever played each other like live. We would just try to beat each other's times.
Yeah, I forget if they even had like multiplayer on that one, but we would definitely go back and forth just trying to beat each other in like the fastest lap on all those different challenges. But yeah, I've had like, I think in total I have like 9 of the Need for Speed games, but last couple of years I got into like more of the sim type racing games like Assetto Corsa.
Oh, I want Assetto Corsa
Project
so
Cars. Yeah, that type of stuff. It's very humbling because like you think you're really good at racing games through Need for Speed, but like, yeah, like it's hard to even drive straight in Assetto Corsa.
Yeah, Assetto Corsa is I would say one of the more realistic simulators. They have different tracks that you can join in, and then you can play as multiple different cars. As far as realism, like I said, I think that's probably going to be the realest one. And when you're watching, like I personally, I watch YouTube personalities of people who do karting, they do Assetto Corsa, they do different stuff like that. And watching them, like they come off of these simulators sweating.
Yeah, kind of like getting out of the karting track, which we'll get into in a minute. But Ian for sure has at least a background in racing. What's your take on Formula One? Where do you feel like your level of interest is there?
Yeah, I think it's really cool. At least with my work schedule, I'm not able to watch the races on Sundays currently, but like it's something complete newbie to Formula One. Like I can tell you, like Schumacher was a person, Lewis Hamilton, Verstappen. Past that, not a whole lot, but like honestly, like I did end up watching that first season of Drive to Survive. Thought that was super awesome. Gonna continue watching that, but Yeah, I'm pretty new to it, but honestly, like I can see myself getting into it for sure.
Sure, and that's perfectly fine. So Jeremiah and have laid out a couple times on the podcast that we're looking at the new entrants to Formula One, as well as some of the veterans of the sport. But Ian and John, much like Jeremiah and I, are new to the sport and learning it and figuring things out. And so that's why we thought their input might be productive here, because it helps give a new perspective from other new entrants. Okay, let's talk a little bit about karting, our main topic for this show. Jeremiah, bring us into how you got into karting.
I mean, I got into karting the second that I heard that a Formula One driver, a NASCAR driver, an IndyCar driver, they all start from karting. So that's kind of the thing that got me so riled up about it, is I was like, okay, well, clearly I'm never going to hop into one of these cars and take it for a couple laps, but we can get as close as we can. And they all start with karting. I mean, all of the dynamics are the same. You still have to get right up on somebody and try and figure out how you're going to go around them. You have to try and defend people that are trying to pass you, take your corners tight, take all of the exits so that you can get plenty of speed going through that turn. I mean, the dynamics, the way that you look at it, the way you approach it are still the exact same. It's just not $120 million car.
And you got into karting before I think you went out before me and you said, dude, you've got to do this.
Yeah, dude, it's crazy. So I went to K1 speed. It's electric cars. They only go up to about 35 miles per hour, but that's because the track is miniaturized. I love it. I know you don't necessarily like it. I like it just because of the fact that the purpose behind it is to set the fastest lap, but that's not at all what I do. I just try to pass as many people as I possibly can. That's the only reason why I use them.
Yeah, so we started at K1, which, like he said, for those not familiar, it's electric karts, it's indoor. It is a small track. What's the lap time? 20 seconds a lap, maybe?
Less.
18.
Way less. Yeah.
It depends on which one you go to. Each one has a different track, but it's between 16 and 20 seconds a lap, and you only get 12 laps in a race. So the races are super quick. But it does lay a foundation for how the karts work, how to read corners, how to read speeds, how to learn when to brake and step on the gas. And so we did that 3 or 4 times maybe before stepping into the next level.
Yeah, we definitely, I think, spent a little too much time on K1 before we finally made the step to gas-powered karts. But that's okay, because when we finally did make the switch, when the tracks are a lot bigger, the karts are going, 15, 20 miles an hour faster. You have more people on the grid and obviously longer lap times, more laps that you can do. It's way, way better.
Yeah, so when I first started karting, it was putt-putt, basically like the little, arcade slash. We have a karting on the side, but they're like black, they're like blowing out black smoke and like they're barely, cruising along this course. And that was what I thought, oh, this is karting. Like this is fun, And I guess my first actual experience would have been K1 with when I came down and rode with y'all. And yeah, it just like I'm actually feeling wind in my face, or in the visor and whatnot, and we're forearms are like you're feeling it as you go into those turns.
Sure.
And you're on literally smooth surface with these slick tires, and you've got to let them heat up. Like there was so much more to that than I ever could have perceived. But like you mentioned,
your wrists hurt so bad.
But like going from electric indoor to outdoor gas powered karts, it was just like this awesome experience to like, oh my gosh, there's so much more, faster.
Save a little bit, Josh.
Yeah.
I don't think it can be considered karting if you can also go inside and play skee ball in between races.
Or they have a party room set up, which K1 definitely has a party room, but that's okay. We'll call that karting.
There's a pizza waiting for you on the table.
But yeah, that my starting was on the putt-putt style, and then kind of eased into it.
And the putt-putt style is still cool. I mean, there's something there. You're out driving, but definitely if you're around like an indoor electric place, that would be, I think, the starting place for karting, just to get your feet wet. Ian, your background in karting.
Yeah, so honestly, same thing as yourself and John as well. growing up doing putt karting basically. But first time I actually did, we did that indoor karting facility K1. That was my first real experience. I like, whoa, like people actually like, take this as a serious thing. There's a whole sport around. We're actually wearing driver's helmets. Not just like no helmeting.
People
But,
are showing up with their own custom helmets.
Yeah, and like wearing different like the attire and all that, and posters on the wall and stuff. I thought that was honestly, because that was my first time being there, and I thought that was pretty awesome actually, just seeing the love for racing at K1.
Awesome. Jeremiah, do you want to break down how our first couple of electric races with Ean and John went and the surprise of the group?
So I will say one of them went smoothly. With the first one, I'd have to say, I think there's two surprises, so I'm not exactly sure which one you're talking about. The first one I gotta say is how unbelievably and randomly fast Ean is in a kart.
Yes, that's the surprise.
Yeah.
With no prior knowledge to karting whatsoever.
No, so we run 3 races at a time at the indoor place, and again, they're only 2 to 4 minutes, 5 minutes maybe races.
Yeah, they're short.
And we do the first race, and it's pretty much chalk. Like Jeremiah gets first, I get second, or vice versa. And Ean and John are kind of in the pack with the rest of the people on the track. And then race 2, Ean gets second. And then race 3, I think Ean wins.
Yeah, Ean got first in that last one.
Yeah, I'm sure part of it. I mean, just like I said, playing racing games growing up, I did actually have an old wheel for like the Xbox One, and
Nice.
when I was little. But yeah, I guess I could say I picked it up pretty quickly, but I just like to go fast,
That's got to be the most Max Verstappen quote I've ever heard in my life.
He walked onto the grid, set down his car, and said, "If you ain't first, you're last," and took off before the guy even said go.
They took Ean from his mother and then immediately just put him in a cart. And then off he went.
Put a little helmet on him. John kind of puttered around the bottom.
Yeah.
But that's okay. I would bet if we would go out again for a 4th time us going, I bet John would be up in the top 3. I am not a good at karting. I know that. Jeremiah, I think, regularly beats me now, which is fine. But it was impressive to see Ean in his first outing just tearing up, not only beating us, but beating everyone else out there.
So, to be fair on that point, I have spent a lot of time watching old karting videos of prior F1 drivers, current F1 drivers when they were first coming into it. And I watch how tight they take these turns. I see like they do the whole lean, they do everything while they go into the turn. So I'm incorporating all of this versus I think you just watched the F1 currently. And so, like I said, the stuff that I'm watching them do, the way that they're taking turns, the way that they're waiting and picking this perfect spot to do overtakes, that's all stuff that I'm slowly digesting and incorporating in our karting, which is why I think my times are getting faster and faster and faster.
Yeah, I agree. Let's go to the next level of karting, which is gas karts. Outdoor, wide open, big track gas karts. So Jeremiah and I did this a little bit before Ean and John. And for context, Ean and John did electric carts one day, and then we took them to gas karts literally the next day. And that was because we tried to do gas karts on the first day, but they were closed. So we had to come back at a different time. And credit to John. John called a place and got it all set up and had this amazing deal for us whenever we got there. So thank you, John, for that.
Yeah.
So the first time, Jeremiah, you went with your brother, didn't you?
I didn't think that my brother would be that fast. He's very daring. There was multiple turns where, whenever you're going into the turn, you kind of swing wide if you're trying to overtake somebody and maybe cut in sharp. That way you can start on the straightaway faster and start building up your speed faster for the straight. He just dive bombs the corner, overtakes me, and does that multiple times in the race. Until he finally pushes it too far, spins out over to the side of the track, and then I pass him like, hi.
He pushed it a little too far. He did he got on edge and went over.
Him and I battled every single race that we did, and every single time he ended up off the track. Every single time.
that's the risk that you run when you're pushing it and dive bombing corners.
Speaking of off the track,
Oh, hang on.
oh, you want to save that? Okay,
I want to save it just
we
a
can
minute.
save it.
So for context, if anybody wants to look up these tracks, we mentioned going to K1. They're everywhere in the US. They all have basically the same track layouts, although they change, but the lap times and the karts are all the same. For outdoor karts, we went to a place called Lone Star Kart Park, which is near Texas Motor Speedway. It is in the parking lot of Texas Motor Speedway, and the lap times are more in the 50-second range.
Yeah, it was like 55 a lap if you're going quick.
But it's still the same 12 laps. And so the races are 4 or 5 times as long as the ones at K1. And you are in karts that legitimately go, is it 45 or 55 miles an hour?
They go up to 50, I think.
Okay, so you're in karts that go 50, and there is enough room to legitimately get those things up to speed. And so whenever you get to Lone Star and in any other big time outdoor karting complex, they not only give you the helmet and the head sock, but now you're wearing the neck brace and you're going to an outdoor grid and you're sitting in a car and they're pulling the cord and they're firing the things up. It is so much more realistic just from the atmosphere of the racing place versus a K1. And that first time you hit that true 45 or 50 miles an hour, that feels really cool.
Yeah, and they give you a little grace lap where they don't time you. So the first one, everybody's lined up in the pits, and as everybody heads out one by one onto the track, they give you like a grace lap before they start timing you. And typically, not everybody, but I like to take advantage of those. I'll start to warm up my tires. I don't know if it actually does anything because these are go-karts, they're not F1 cars, but you know, it makes me feel cool. So I'm gonna do it anyway. I'll sit there and I'm like trying to get some heat into my tires.
Yeah, so Jeremiah had a little bit of an incident at the last one. Around lap 4, what did you have spilling on you?
Dude, not around lap 4. When I got out there on lap 1, I felt like a sprinkle, and I was like, oh, is it raining? And then like a couple laps later, I felt a bigger sprinkle. And then I looked down, it's hitting my knee right next to the gas hose, and there's a leak coming out of the gas hose, just spewing out onto my knee. I go the entire race, mainly because in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I pull into the pits right now. They make me hop out the cart into another one. I'm losing at least a lap or 2 in time. And I'm only there to have fun. So I'm like, I'm not going to catch on fire. It won't happen. So I just stay out there, go all the way around, do all my laps, come back in, and I'm like, hey, man, this one's leaking. And he's like, why didn't you say anything? I'm like, I don't know. So I go inside, and they credit me a free race, which I'm definitely going to be using as soon as it warms up.
Yeah, it's a good thing you don't smoke while you're racing.
Can you imagine a fireball going around the track as I'm just sitting there?
Brings a whole new meaning to the Marlboro car,
Oh,
the
God.
Camel Lotus. So we go through the gas carts, and in my opinion, it is a lot better than the electric carts, but I recognize the electric carts are a foundation for karting, and honestly, that's probably where you should start. It is smaller, it is less time. Your wrists hurt a ton after the gas cart race. So yeah, but we took Ian and John to do that. John, what was your feeling going from the electric K1 carts into the Lone Star gas carts?
Oh, freedom. Just having a wider track is so much. When you can go too wide into a turn and you don't have to worry about running into the barrier, like, and not only that, but the fact that there are curbs in the outdoor track, like, it's a suggestion, it's not a wall. I mean, as long as
all you need is one tire. One tire.
yeah,
that's it.
exactly. But yeah, and it just less hairpins. I
feel like the
struggle
hairpins
with
are-
hairpins because when you're in
Well, the hairpins inside, because it's so condensed, everything feels like a hairpin.
yeah.
But outside, there's like one legit hairpin.
Oh yeah, like hairpin turns. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah. So John does that, and he mentioned more room. We will get to more room in a minute when we go back to the electric carts. But John, what was like the biggest revelation that you had from going 30, 35 in the electric carts to 45? What did you get like from a strategy perspective?
Oh, so it took me a lot longer than it probably should have to realize you don't always have to be full throttle. I mean,
I thought you were gonna go. I thought you were gonna go a
I
different
thought you were
direction. with
going
that.
the other way with
where were
that.
you thinking I was gonna go? Like, you could open.
I thought you were
going
gonna say that you don't need the brake because you don't always need to brake.
Well, but I
No.
always found myself going into turns way too fast, being on the outside of the turn, and almost in the wall, slamming on my brakes where I'm straightening it out at the last minute, and then everyone just cuts inside and goes on by. Like
Pretty much.
yeah. I saw a lot of license plates.
But that's okay. Because I
Yeah.
feel like if you're the type of driver that goes into the turn with too much gas, not enough brake, that means that you're going to be one of the ones that are pushing the limits of the cart. So all you have to do is figure out when to brake versus like the average driver who's maybe more passive going into the turn, braking too much. He's got to push himself past his comfort level to get to that point. Versus, like I said, with you, you're already way past that level. You're just working down to what works.
Yeah. Well, and also another thought that came to mind is you have more room. Like, it feels like people spread out much more
Yeah.
on that outdoor track than like K1 per se. Like, if you get ahead, like Jeremiah, I know when you would pass everyone, you would already be on my tail again, ready to pass. Like, but when you're on a large course like that, it's outdoors. I mean, you have a lot of more open air per se.
Right.
Which
Yeah.
is,
If
which
I
is
wanted,
nice.
if I wanted to pass y'all, if I wanted to stay with y'all during the race, there was no way I was going to go all the way around the track and catch back up to y'all again for a second pass. So I would just slam on the brake and pull over,
Yeah.
let y'all pass by, and then try again.
Yeah,
They load up the grid, and for some reason I feel like Jeremiah is always the first car.
I hate it because I
no
want to
matter
pass.
no matter how we sign up for these or what order of names we give them, I feel like inside, outside, whatever, he's always first. And he's like, I don't want to be first. I want to pass somebody.
I just pull over right outside,
Pulls
right
off
at
to
the
the
exit
side.
of the pit, and just let everybody pass me, and then zip in behind them.
Oh man. All right. So let's go to Ian, and then after Ian, we'll talk a little bit about our bloopers on the track.
Yeah, so as far as the outdoor track, obviously, I think the biggest thing was just the atmosphere in general. When we went that one time, we got there the same time they were setting up. Like same time the employees and the crew was all getting in there. We were part of that crowd of cars. So we actually got there and saw them, do their whole setup and everything. And as they're, firing up all the carts and stuff, that just like an awesome atmosphere in general. You could tell just like the crew there was, at least from what I've noticed compared to to K1, was that they were just the crew is a lot more passionate about the carts as well. They're talking about new karting facilities that are opening up and, future plans like, oh yeah, I'm going over here this weekend. Like, you could tell they're really into it. But as far as actually the carts themselves, speed, that's the greatest thing ever, just, yeah, I mean, I was flooring it all the way around, leaning into the corners and everything just to like make sure you get that turn proper and all that. But it was really cool having that open track, just like John was saying. I think that helped to kind of like follow through like with the racing line. Whereas at K1 with electric carts, like the track is good. I like it. It's small, it's kind of hard to follow a racing line when, the track is like 3 carts wide. But
yeah, the second you get out of a turn, you have to immediately adjust for the next turn.
Right, yeah. But this one, yeah, much more open and free. I would cut the corners just a little bit, right? But still keep wheels on track. But my car would hop up. And so like several times, just from going on like little jumps and bumps like that, I got pretty bruised up just from doing a normal race, like for like the next couple of days now, I had like bruises on the side of my hips and on my back too, just from all those bumps. But man, it was well worth it, so much freedom.
Yeah, to kind of tie into that, I had plenty of conversations with the guys that worked at Lone Star Car Park, and we were talking about the different Facebook pages for karting in the area, the different tracks that they go and visit, where you can go to get a cart if you wanted to buy a used one and start joining facilities. Yeah, they're very knowledgeable there. I think that the passion level compared to like a K1 employee who's just kind of working a job versus these guys who they're working a job that pertains to a hobby that they have.
Right. They're all talking about how they're building their own carts or they want to build their own carts. And I don't know if this is true for every major metro area in the US, but there is a big karting community, I think, in most places. And these are the places that you find those groups. They know the people, they know the carts, they know the tracks. And every time we go, they're like, hey, are y'all building carts yet? And we're like, no, not quite yet.
Yeah.
You know it's a good place whenever they say the lap record holder is their mechanic and they point over to the guy in the shop.
Yeah.
He's just sitting over there wrenching on something. Yeah, and we're definitely, in my opinion, I think that we need to take a trip, and maybe we bring everybody with us here. Maybe we film the whole thing, but I think that we need to take a trip to COTA, because in Austin, I believe at the track there is a go-kart track there, and we need to do that one.
Yeah, there's a few that are connected to either NASCAR tracks or obviously the F1 tracks, which we just have COTA here. But I'm going to bring up a little bit later. Apparently, Atlanta has a massive karting scene.
Really?
Yeah, the Atlanta Motorsports Park. And so we need to look at doing a turn one road trip. Okay, so the gas carts, obviously next level over the electric carts. Let's talk a little issues on track.
Yeah.
So I'll start with the most, not the most obvious of the group, which we have a story that we'll get to in a second. But going back to something that John said that on the outdoor gas track, you can go 2 or 3 wide in a turn, no problem, and it's easy. In K1, if you have more than 4 people on the track, you're about to not have that fun of a race. Reason being, they can slow your carts down at any time. And I cannot count the number of times, not necessarily hitting walls at K1, but you come up behind somebody at the hairpin turn in the middle of the track and you have to slam on your brakes and you just spin out. And that is so frustrating.
Yeah.
I think it's also frustrating too whenever you have somebody in front of you who's going way slower, and let's say they might tap you or tap a wall. Y'all are both getting shut down, completely shut down. Maybe brought to a small lull and then gradually picking your speed back up, but you're getting shut down, and that's going to ruin your lap time. That's going to ruin if you have a internal race going on with you and your friends that y'all are maybe betting on or just for fun. But yeah, that's going to completely ruin your race.
Gas carts, you hit a wall at 45 miles an hour, they don't care. Keep on going.
In fact, while you're doing laps, I remember when we were standing on the side and we were watching this one guy who was like waiting for no cars to be going by, and then he goes flying past the track trying to get to the center area because somebody smacked the wall, and he's just sitting there trying to push it back in place while the race is going on.
Okay, let's go to this event, and then we'll see if this branches off into the other stories. John, tell us about K1.
More specifically, your experience with K1.
So I mentioned hairpins earlier. I have I'm really bad at turns and spinning out in turns or going too slow into turns. And so there was one time, what was it, the last time we went, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The last time we went, oh god, yeah, it was terrible. I was
you got out relatively unharmed.
Oh, it was I'm not gonna say it was great because I felt terrible about it. But I went through the last hairpin right before the checkered the start line, and I spun out, and I think I remind me if I'm wrong, Ian, but you had to brake abruptly, right, to avoid hitting me. And that caused you to spin out, right?
Yeah. So as you're going into that hairpin, I think I don't think you actually spun out. I think you're about to spin out.
Mm-hmm.
But
you tapped me, I think, from behind.
We were battling out. I was right on your tail.
Yeah.
Behind me, Jeremiah was right there too, and I was like right behind you. But you're about to spin out. I think you ended up slamming on your brakes to stop from spinning out.
Yeah.
I slammed my brakes, but Thomas was right behind me. He had to slam on his brakes. Next thing we know, we're all piled up. Part of my cart like flipped up. There's like the shell that goes around the go-kart.
Those
flipped
high
up
school
onto
kids
the
have
track.
never seen that.
No,
They've never seen that before.
I think it was like
So-
the rear shielding fender. I think.
Off.
Like,
So
oh.
if you don't mind, I'd like to tell my visuals from this experience.
Yeah, I think Jeremiah had the best view of all of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I had passed John a little bit before all this happened, so I was making a push. I get past him, he spins out, so I have this massive gap. I turn back behind me because I'm going into a turn, so I don't have to do a full head rotation. I can kind of just look to my right a little bit and see John back there. And a little bit later, I'm going around the track, and my cart just comes to a stop, and I'm like, okay. So I turn around to see what's going on in the track. I'm looking around, and I see Thomas and Ian over here in a pile. Part of Ian's car is over there. Part of Ian's car is over there. Thomas is sitting there grabbing his back. And John's exactly where he was when I turned around a couple seconds ago. Hasn't moved. Same spot. And I'm like, hey, what happened?
And it's rare that they stop the entire race, but they stopped
Yeah.
every cart on the track because they had to with the debris.
And when Jeremiah said piled up, he literally meant like
I mean,
Thomas's
like,
front
Thomas
left
and
wheel was
Ian.
on top of this.
There was a
like-
guy on top of me too, behind me.
Oh, was there really?
Yeah, there was a third guy.
Oh my God.
So for context, and this is both indoor and outdoor karts. If you hit a turn with the wrong amount of speed and then you brake and don't gas out of it, instead of just slowing down, your car, the back end spins and then you stop. So it's not like a full like 360 rotation. It's like you lose the back end and you just stop. And I think that's what John was on the verge of. And then like Ian said, Ian comes up and kind of runs into him, but I think the bigger collision was me just slamming into Ian at 40 miles an hour because I had that thing going. And then the guy from behind me hits me, and I think that's what breaks Ian's car.
Oh, okay.
Was
The
him
whole
pushing me under Ian.
See, and the worst thing about this whole thing is I'm like probably 10, 20 car lengths away now. No one thinks I did anything wrong. Everyone's looking at the three of them piled up, and I'm just like, I feel so guilty.
Yeah, I'm just sitting there on the other side of the track looking around. All of a sudden, I see the race stopped, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I get it. They collided. Let's get back to it. No, they had to bring out a new cart for Ian. And then eventually, when they got to Thomas, they checked on him, made sure he was okay. They had to bring out another cart for Thomas because if I'm not mistaken, first of all, Ian's cart was just blown up. I mean, the back end of it just took off. I mean, not the back end, the whole top section, right? Because it was split like one's on top of the other. Yeah, your top end just disappeared.
Yeah.
And Thomas's front end is like
Just
this.
dragging.
So now everywhere he's going, he's just dragging the nose. And I'm like, oh my God.
And so we get all this cleaned up. We finish the race, and we get out, and my back hurt bad. And I go up to Ian, and Ian's like, "Oh, I'm fine." I'm like, "Ian, are you not hurting at all?" And he says, "My spine kind of hurts."
Yeah, a little bit.
And again, John gets out of it unscathed.
Out of curiosity, Ian, how were those next couple days? Because we weren't around each other.
It wasn't too bad. Like I said, I mean, I get bruised up just from doing a normal race, but yeah, it's just another bruise, honestly. Thomas definitely got the worst end of it for sure, though.
It hurt for days.
I mean, yeah, I guess Ian slapped a wall, Thomas slapped a cart. So
And then got slapped by another cart.
Yeah.
But we all signed a waiver.
I mean, what are you gonna do? Sue them? Because John's a bad driver?
Yeah, I'm gonna sue them, and then they'll sue John.
Yeah. They'll revoke my karting license, you know?
John, I genuinely believe that because of the fact that you're getting so much into F1, the more races you watch, I think you're genuinely going to get faster at karting. I think you're going to be one of the faster ones just because you might be starting out slow now, but as you watch how the professionals are taking these turns, how the professionals are overtaking, I think you're going to get there.
Well, see, one thing that I think is interesting that you brought up was watching previous karting videos.
Mm-hmm.
Because I never even considered that.
Yeah,
because they
no, there's some
obviously
great
handle
ones.
differently than other.
That's how I found out that Charles Leclerc and Max had an incident back when they were younger.
Okay, so I've got one more little issue before we go on to your green shirt guy story. Me and this 7 or 8 year old at Lone Star Kart Park, the gas kart outdoor place, were duking it out. And I feel a little bit bad because, again, he was like under 10, but he was going for it. He was dive bombing corners and everything. Well, there was one turn that I wasn't giving up, and it's that turn that's at the end of the second straightaway after the first long straightaway. And we both went into the wall at like 45, 50 miles.
Oh my God.
But we learned that those walls are hollow and plastic, and they move because we sent them flying. And then we just turned around and went back to the track.
No black flags, just yellows.
No, and the attendant came out. She fixed the wall, and that was it. They didn't slow anybody down or anything. All right, green shirt guy.
So green shirt guy. So one of the first times, if not, I think the first time actually, was it?
The first time me and you were together at K1.
Yeah. So me and Thomas go for the first time electric karting, and we're watching this one guy who shows up there. He's got his own helmet, he's got his own gloves, he's got his own racing shoes, and we're like, Jesus, this guy means business.
He brought a box.
Oh yeah, it's had everything in it, and we're sitting here with like, yeah, I'll take that rental helmet, and y'all don't offer gloves, no boots, no race suits. Okay, well, I'll take the helmet then. And he sits there and puts on his gloves, puts on his boots. He's got his helmet with this little neck guard or whatever you want to call it,
all custom.
And this man's going around the track, fastest one out there, by the way, with a purpose. He's actually asked the guys what the fastest lap is. That was his intent of the day, was to get that lap time, which he didn't, I don't believe. But as he's going around the track, their race is over. I think they're coming to a slow. He's kind of over in a corner. I'm not sure if the cart in front of him was slowing down. I don't remember exactly, but he was slowing down coming out of a high-speed corner. Well, the person behind him, I guess, didn't get the memo. So they come flying through that corner and don't see him. Bang, right into the back of him. And we see his entire head and neck just, and I was like,
oh, he just died right there.
No, it was bad. It was really bad. I could tell immediately. I was like, okay, that's why we have to sign a waiver.
And why we have helmets and why we're in a 5-point harness.
Yikes.
Ever since then, we
Jesus.
referred to him as green shirt guy, but that was the most violent. I mean, because we couldn't see me, Ian, and John's pileup. We have no footage of that.
No.
But that image of that guy whiplashing is burned
That
into
was
my brain.
Bad. He hits the back of him going at least 25, 30, maybe 35. And you just see his entire, because he was leaned forward too. He wasn't like in his seat, leaned back. He was leaned forward because he was trying to slow down for this cart in front of him. So he gets slapped in the back. You see him hit the chair, and then his neck just went back. And I'm just sitting there like, he's dead. There's no way he's not.
Turns out he was fine, we think, but it
He
looked
was fine.
horrible.
It was just an incident.
All right, so to wrap up our karting stories, and Ian, John, feel free to provide any more stories or context you want, but I want to talk a little bit about wish listy stuff, if that works. So in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, there is a known karting place called Dallas Karting Complex, and I think that's next on our list, right?
Oh, yeah.
It is the supreme karting facility in the whole state of Texas. They have 2 tracks that they just recently renovated, and the karts go even faster, supposedly. And
Well, they have other options too. You can get the
Other
faster
options.
ones.
So with all of this in the gas karts, if there's a gas kart place near you, they have the standard karts, which is what we're talking about. They have upgrades where you have like a 60-mile-an-hour kart, a 90-mile-an-hour kart, and then they have the karts that you can see like the young Formula Feeder Series guys using that go like 120 miles an hour. And for those that want a reference point, there is a video on YouTube, 2013 Max Verstappen in a go-kart going about 124 miles an hour, which feels ridiculous compared to like the 50 miles an hour that we've experienced. But we definitely want to try Dallas Karting Complex. I'm going to throw another one at you. If y'all want to Google this, Kart Country, Kentucky.
Kart Country, Kentucky.
It is the largest karting track.
Oh my gosh.
And I'll put a picture on the screen. But yeah, it is the largest karting track, and they have the same cars that we're used to.
Wow.
So we need to go to Kentucky.
I can't help but notice there's no barriers, no walls.
Nothing, just grass. Welcome to Kentucky. This is how we kart.
Holy cow.
That's exciting. We need to take a trip to that immediately.
They even have batting cages.
Oh no, it's
Okay,
it's
okay.
putt-putt.
It's
That's what we were
putt-putt.
trying to get rid of.
Okay, and then there's one more example. Atlanta Motorsports Park.
Wow,
It
it
looks like a legit F1 track.
I mean, yeah, because you've got the rolling mountains in the back, nothing but trees and wildlife behind it. And then you're looking at the actual track itself. It's got some stands. It's got a bunch of different buildings on the outskirts, kind of like you would see in an F1 track. It honestly kind of looks like Coda.
Or Spa or something like that. It's out in the middle of the
something
woods.
out in the middle of nowhere.
Well, even the layout too. It's pretty long, and it looks like some parts of the track are actually obscured.
Some of these straightaways are nasty.
Dude.
So we have a group text between this group, and there was chat of taking a trip up to New Jersey.
Yeah, for those of you that don't know, they just opened up a new indoor karting facility there that's supposed to be the biggest one in the entire United States, and we have to try it.
Dude, I would, if we gotta find time, because I would do that. That would be
John
fun.
was on board. He's like, I'll take the days off of work right now.
Like, hang on, let's everybody else talk to your boss, and we'll actually get something scheduled.
John's already got a flight booked.
John,
No, I had to
called us
cancel.
the next day.
I had to
from
cancel
there.
that flight.
He's like, guys, I've been standing outside the facility for hours. Are you coming or not?
And then I think me and Jeremiah, or at least I, have thrown around some outlandish ideas for opening our own karting facility. And I think Ian has shot me down on almost all of those ideas.
Yeah, dude, safety hazards everywhere. Everywhere. We're getting sued and closed immediately.
That's why you have the waiver.
Does anybody
I don't think this
remember?
waiver's gonna save you.
Does anybody remember what the track entails?
Indoor and outdoor, multi-level. What were the other ones? Let's hear it.
Were we talking
Thomas,
about?
all right. I want to hear Thomas's pitch as if I'm a shark on Shark Tank and he wants to open a facility. Let's hear what you got.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Do whatever the Shark Tank music is. Okay, so you come up on this place, and it looks like a legit airplane hangar, right? But we're talking like massive, like where they build airplanes, not where they store them. I want this thing to be huge. And there is half of the track inside and half of the track outside, and they are connected in the middle, but you can also split them off. So you can have two different tracks, or if there's a rain day, you can all stay inside. There's multiple experiences here depending on what day and time you come. If you come on a Saturday afternoon, you're getting VR goggles strapped on your head, and you're going around a virtual track in a real car.
Hold on. I'm going to stop you right there because I got a couple questions here. Are we talking about a cart that is moving around a real track while you're virtually on the track?
Yep.
Okay. Follow-up question. What if it lags?
You got to figure that one out, Chief.
You just start skipping and you're like 5 meters
Flying
up
off
on
the track. Slams right into a wall.
No, it sounds really cool. What else?
So you got all these VR things that if you come, there were a couple other ideas about water randomly being sprayed on the track, just to give a little bit of texture.
What?
Yeah. Are
there's
the
a lot of
cards?
different ways we can go.
Are the cards
There's going to
equipped
be like
with wets?
50 pages of waivers.
John, wets are an option, but you have to pit for them.
No, you sign here and here and here. Hold on. And here and here. And I'm going to need a signature on this one.
There was another idea of, there was something with drones. Where you have like a drone following you while you do your race, but everybody's got their own drone.
Jeez.
I'm telling you, man, this is an idea.
Oh my.
You got the VR, you got the night mode, you got 2 tracks, you got indoor, outdoor. It's huge. It's multi-level. I don't know what's not to miss.
And it's pitch black.
I got a question for Thomas and Jeremiah.
Shoot.
Do you find yourself building a car at some point, a cart?
100%. I've
Okay.
already looked up all the parts that I want to buy. I'm not even kidding.
He
I've
sent
done
me the
extensive
link
research.
Yeah.
for the what he's like, dude, you can piece together carts on this website.
Is it
I've
like
picked
build,
out every part that I want.
is it like build a computer but like cart style?
Yeah, yes and no. The thing is that from the website that I was looking at, it's more geared towards, I guess, the parts that they're in business with. So it's not every part that you can possibly get. I did enjoy, however, like I said, going through all of these different parts. I've watched multiple YouTube videos on building carts. Like, I really want to buy one.
Okay.
All it's going to take is the initial investment of a used chassis, and then from there I can buy all the tires, I can buy all of the different parts that go on the outside, anything else that I'm going to need, weights. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff. And honestly, I'd be fine with getting like a not as good cart chassis like used, just because you can swap out that engine and you can put in like the LO206, which is a bunch of series that they run. You can put in 100cc, 150cc. You can up it up as you go and just make subtle changes to the chassis.
You're not running the Toro lawnmower engine?
No.
Or the oh god, what was that? Like the Predator 2.0 go-kart.
Yeah,
like
from Harbor Freight.
Harbor Freight. Hey, man.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with it.
So I do have a question though. On those kits or on those parts, are they mainly like European, like metric style, like where everything on there is like millimeters, or is it standardized?
No. So one thing that a lot of people actually don't understand is that it's not just F1 that starts with karting. I mean, it's NASCAR, it's IndyCar. So with all of these American feeder series that also lead into that, they all start at karting pretty much.
Okay, cool.
So you'll find parts in America pretty simple. I mean, there's multiple different companies in America, and then of course, if you want to, you can go and look in Europe, and there's several out there.
Yeah. Awesome.
Before we go to Ian for any final thoughts, John, give me your top 5 drivers for next season. Where are they finishing?
Oh, putting me on the spot.
Jeez.
Top 5 drivers. So we're talking championship.
Yep, championship points.
Yes.
Give me number 1. Roll to number 5.
Max Verstappen.
1.
Okay.
George Russell.
2.
Lewis Hamilton.
Okay.
Sainz. And then I don't know, Perez. Let's just say Perez.
Charles
Leclerc doesn't
nowhere
make the top
top
5.
No.
What a
Didn't
hot
he just
take.
didn't you know, everyone's like, oh, because he just, not to get into the post like between season off season drama, but didn't he just end a relationship?
I think he just exited a relationship.
He
Yeah,
did.
So he's got his mind somewhere else.
Oh, John is in the weeds now.
I'll offer you a counterpoint.
At that point, I'm done. That's I'm
Clear
not
head.
changing my
I'll offer you a
list.
counterpoint.
Okay.
Charles Leclerc loses
When-
his girlfriend, which
Yeah.
has nothing to do with this podcast, but it's already been mentioned, so we're rolling with it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, no, it's fine. I'm gonna play into it.
Okay.
Breaks up with his girlfriend, has a fire for what his actual job is now. No more distractions. No more, oh, my girl's over here. Let me make sure she's having. No, it's race. And I'm telling you, I genuinely believe that he might finish number 2, if not number 1.
Because he was number 2 last season.
Barely,
Well,
but yeah.
Well, I don't know. So I feel like this first race is going to be telling.
I agree.
Because
Yes and no, just because if you remember last year, Ferrari dominated for the beginning of the season, and we saw how that played out.
Yeah.
All right. Well, interesting hot takes from John, not putting the number 2 finisher from last year in the top 5 because of a breakup. But I'm on board. I like it. All right, Ian, final thoughts, questions, comments?
Yeah. I guess I gave some thought. Thomas's idea of having this big track and an airport hangar style place, and it's VR, and you're actually driving around with the VR headset. You know what? That doesn't sound too bad. That sounds
Doesn't sound too
that's
bad.
pretty fun. Yeah.
We're
If
getting
anything,
sued.
like, yeah, I don't know as far as like whether it actually happened, but that sounds pretty fun. As far as something like a middle point, you could even do something like wearing a VR headset, but like, and you're in an actual cart, but maybe you're like on a dyno, like in like.
See,
you're
that's
in a
what
cart
I
that's
envisioned.
stationary.
Or, okay, I'll scale it back. Augmented reality.
Interesting.
So you still
That'll
see
be-
your real field of vision, but now there's stuff.
Do different like scenery, like
Jurassic Park,
Rainbow
so you've got
Road.
dinosaurs chasing you.
Live action.
Ooh, yeah.
But in this version, if a dinosaur catches you, you get booted off the track by something coming out of the wall.
Yikes.
Sign that paperwork.
So another thing I noticed is out here in Vegas, they have something called Speed Vegas Exotics Racing. So it's not karts, but you're actually driving, Lambos, Porsches.
Oh, yes, I
stuff like
saw
that.
this.
It's expensive, but you'd be on an actual track, driving something like that. And but they literally have like day packages, where you don't have to have like, I'm assuming you don't have to have like experience prior, other than your driver's license. And I'm sure you got to sign a bunch of waivers, but that would look pretty cool. And
Give
obviously
them your insurance.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
probably.
correct me if I'm wrong. They also, not only do you do your own driving session where you're the driver with a accredited, I guess, teacher in the passenger seat, but they also take you in the passenger seat with a professional driver who tears it up.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I haven't looked that much into it, but honestly, like I'd be totally down to do something like that. That looks pretty cool.
All right, let it be known, viewers, if you want to send us thousands of dollars, we can go live out our dreams.
Yeah.
I've got one more thing to take us home because I think this is the most interesting point of this whole karting and bringing in new people to the F1 thing. So Jeremiah and I have been playing the Formula One video games for a while now, since the 2020 or 2021 game. I say it's a while, it's 2 or 3 years. The first people out of this group to have wheels are Ean and John.
Yeah.
I now have a wheel. I am not good at it at all. And so here me and Jeremiah are the two F1 podcast guys getting torched by Ean and John.
Jeremiah is still better on the controller than we are at the wheel. But
The controller's kind of cheeseball just because, you're not really fighting any kind of steering wheel. So, like, for example, on the controller, if you wanted to send it into a corner, you could just move the joystick all the way to the left or right and go, versus if you did that in the wheel, you're not turning.
Yeah, it's my issue of understeering where I was just yanking the wheel one way and then the other.
Yeah, I don't know how it didn't register that you're supposed to just ease into turns. I mean, if you watch them live, they're not like...
I was whipping that thing around and I wasn't turning
and going straight.
just straight to walls every time. I'm like, oh, my race is over, my wheel's off. All right, Ean, John, thank you all for the time and the comments and the feedback. Hopefully we can do this again as we all get more into the sport and learn some more stuff. Maybe in a couple of weeks or months, we can present even better information to the listeners as they also progress into Formula One.
Yeah, and we hope to eventually at some point, once we revisit the topic of karting, be able to bring you actual footage from on our helmets via GoPro or whatever it may be, but just as we're doing actual laps around the track so that y'all can have something to watch and enjoy, critique if you want to, while we're sitting here talking about it.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
And thanks for having us.
Thank you, guys.
yeah, thank you guys.
So we hope you enjoyed our talk with Ean and John as we went into karting and what their experiences were, what our experiences were, and some of the things that have happened to us while we've been out there.
The pain and the horror from the crash at K1.
It's okay. It's okay. We will get better. It just takes time.
It still hurts.
We hope you guys enjoyed that little snippet. Thank you for watching another episode of Turn One, a Formula One podcast. We hope that you enjoyed this episode, and we hope that you'll continue to keep watching as we continue to release more and more content as the weeks roll by, leading up into the season where we'll start doing 2 episodes a week, one as a race recap on Mondays and our regularly scheduled podcast every Friday.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, guys.